97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
We expect to win every time we step on the field. That's just the mindset that we have.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Let's bring in Geoff Mosher as we dive a little deeper into the latest on Desean Jackson as he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Moshe, what's up, pal?
How are you guys doing?
All right. Plenty to dive right into, obviously. This was something that kind of came out of right field the other night, and then it just kind of snowballed yesterday. Let's get to where we are right now. Yesterday, the response to Desean Jackson's social media post, for which Jackson apologized by video once and then by a note twice. The Eagles issued a statement, said the team will take appropriate action. We don't know what action that will be. So, where yesterday were the Eagles with their statement? When you read that statement, read the tea leaves on that statement and what you took from it.
Yeah, I thought the statement really conveyed the type of anger that the organization felt toward Desean's posts. I mean, the wording in the statement to me was clear because it said, irregardless of what Desean meant to say, the words that were expressed were, quote, offensive, harmful, and absolutely appalling. And it added that the team would take appropriate action. And I thought that it was important that they said, irregardless of intent. Ignorance is not an excuse all the time to be able to get away with saying or expressing or sharing any kind of sentiments that are anti-Semitic or racist. We don't accept that for anybody of any race, religion, or culture to defame another one based on just I didn't know. And to be honest with you, Desean's 33. You should know when you're sharing something that has Adolf Hitler's name on it, whether it's attributed correctly to Adolf Hitler or not, that's a terrible thing to do. And so the organization was appalled. You saw to the point where Desean had to even re-apologize with a better worded statement than his initial video, which I thought was not a great apology. And the words in that video that seemed to say, I didn't mean it in the way that you guys took it, was sort of an example that maybe he wasn't fully comprehending the gravity of the post and the situation and how the organization felt about it. So by the end of the night, I felt we being just us as the public, but everybody involved was on a path here toward a better understanding. It sounds as if Desean is going to talk with some religious community leaders, some rabbis, make a visit to a rabbi and get a little better understanding and education. And I think that's what the organization wants to see from Desean. Adam Kaplan put it out on our video yesterday on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel that this thing isn't done. Desean still has to demonstrate, at least according to what Adam reported from his sources, a better understanding and be more of an advocate for equality for everyone going forward. This yesterday wasn't the last of it, and so we'll see what goes from here on out.
Right. So there was a report yesterday that basically noted that Jackson met with Lori and Roseman, and that while Lori was very disappointed by the post, no suspension, no termination. He hasn't been cut, has been discussed. We're not sure, but there was a report from Adam Schefter that essentially said that this could come down to a financial thing. Can they find something in that contract? As you mentioned, Adam Kaplan said the team met with Jackson and the agent and that the situation's not going away. And could that be referring to what Schefter said is if they can find something in the contract, would the Eagles be willing to cut ties, or are they more tied to him because they know what he means to them and they want to see him kind of learn from this more than just get rid of him?
Right, and that depends on the language in the contract of what is conduct detrimental to the team, and can that be invoked to a point in which they can get out of the guaranteed money. But I think that's tied into Desean Jackson's action over the next few days. I don't think that if they find a loophole right now and they feel like they can get out of the contract right now, they're going to pull the trigger. I think Jeffrey Lurie has shown that he has a tolerance for his players who make mistakes as long as they're willing to make amends for their mistakes. And that's why I think it's still important, like it was for Michael Vick, like it was for Riley Cooper, and now for Desean Jackson, to, get a better educated, to get some lessons learned, and then become a better person because of it.
Right, that's what I was asking. If they found this loophole, they wouldn't automatically just say, we got a way out of this. They would want to see his actions first before acting on a potential loophole.
That's what I suspect. And I think that's what Adam was trying to convey also from his sources in YouTube. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, and, Jeffrey Lurie may go to bed tonight saying, you know what, this just isn't right with me no matter what, and change his mind. And maybe if something in that contract would allow him to get out of it, maybe he would make that decision. But I do feel like that what we suspect is true, is that he's going to give Desean a chance to make it right.
How much does the fact that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman are part of the Jewish community plays a role in the outcome of what happens?
I don't know. I think the easy answer to that, Hunter, would be, well, obviously they may have it hits home with them because Jeffrey and Howie are both Jewish, and not just Jewish in religion, but also in practice and how they identify themselves. So I think that matters. But we wouldn't know unless they weren't Jewish, right? And how they would react to that kind of situation. Would they have as strong of a reaction? You would hope so. You would hope that just like Jeffrey Lurie is not an African-American, but when Riley Cooper used the N-word, he was very adamant that something had to be done. And so Riley Cooper had to, went away for a week and apparently got counseling during that week. That was what was said and told. I don't know if anybody ever really followed up on that, but that was supposed to be the case. And they took a stance on it as an organization there, but they also gave a second chance.
Right. I was going to follow up. How much is there dealing with the Cooper situation from 2013? Do they look back and say, we didn't handle that the right way? We could have handled that differently. We could have handled that better. How much of that experience may come into play with the way they handle this?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's all wrapped in, not just, with Riley and with just bringing back Michael Vick after his suspension, which was not related to anything racial, but still, I think it's just the idea that Jeffrey Lurie is an owner who believes in second chances. And because he sets that precedent, I think it would look a little strange if he all of a sudden decided not to give a second chance. But I just think it's in, Howie Roseman is someone who thinks very fondly of Desean, brought him back. They have a good relationship. It was once not always great, but is now fine. And Jeffrey the same way. I mean, he gives these guys a second chance. Now, if we want to have a real discussion, I mean, if Desean Jackson were a rookie free agent who had done nothing in the NFL, maybe he'd be cut. And then the same thing for if Riley Cooper back then was not at the time, a potential starter / significant role player. If he was just a guy on the bottom of the roster, maybe he'd be cut too. That's the way it goes in professional sports, rightly or wrongly. That's just the way it is. But I do think that precedent in the past impacts the decision now. And some people say, well, it's a different time now, and maybe different time calls for different action, and maybe a different owner or somebody else in charge would say that. But it's just not been in Jeffrey's history. He's willing to give people second chances as long as they make amends.
Is there any news about Marquise Goodwin? Because he commented on Desean Jackson's post, essentially talking about how he hoped that people cared about the Black Lives Matters issues the same way that people have outrage towards Desean Jackson. So I don't know if there was any comments inside about what Marquise Goodwin had to say.
No, I mean, I saw it, and it just, to me, I'm going to make a broader statement here. I would never discourage anybody from using great resources like Twitter or Facebook or social media. But at some point, I think we all just need to stop arguing and talking and trying to convince people and trying to rationalize or trying to defend or trying to attack or trying to critique on social media. It's just an abyss. And there are enough stories that have come out now by people, institutions that have studied social media for us to really understand that a very large percentage of comments made on social media, people you think you're responding to, people think you're having an argument with or a discussion with, or you think you're educating or you're attacking, are not actually people. they're bot accounts. They're intentionally created accounts whose sole purpose is to lure you into or to sow seeds of bitterness and division inside you. So to me, like when I see all this commenting, I hope this on Twitter, or this person said this on their Instagram. To me, I just wish everybody would just chill out on being the first to run to social media to argue or criticize or defend or attack. I think Twitter, social media, Facebook, all that could be very good as far as sharing reputable stories from reputable outlets and people in the media. But the conversations that people think that they're having are complete. It's like living in the Truman Show. It's not what you think it is. So I just, in general, would recommend people to spend more time reading books, reading, real literature, whatever the subject matter is, than arguing with a potential bot on social media.
Geoff Mosher, it's Football at 4, powered by Inside the Birds. Check out the latest podcast. Go deeper into all of the Eagles' offseason news and notes, of course. What did you think about some of the stuff Joe Banner? Obviously he worked with the Eagles. He probably still knows people there very well. He said if a white player said anything about AAs as outrageous as what Desean Jackson said about Jews tonight, there would be at least a serious conversation about cutting him and a need for a team meeting to discuss, which would be totally appropriate. Absolutely indefensible. And that's not all. I mean, he went on yesterday on multiple texts. I mean, he felt very strongly about this. I mean, what did it shows that, I'm imagining if Joe Banner was here still, that there might be a different way this was being handled.
I don't know. That would be interesting because I don't think Joe was in Philly when I think it was just out when the Riley Cooper.
Yeah, he was just in Cleveland, down. I think.
So I think Joe's a little bit more to now freely express an opinion on something now that he's removed from being part of a sports franchise when he worked for a sports franchise and had to be a little more buttoned down in what he did and what he said. But I mean, I see some inconsistencies. He's saying that if a white player had said something equivalently damaging as to what Desean shared on his Instagram, that there would be this, that, and the other. Well, there is this, that, and the other. I mean, we're sitting here talking about the organization, how they feel about what Desean said, about looking into his contract to see if there's a way out of it and cutting him, about getting him the same type of education or counseling or whatever you want to call it, interaction with the religious communities that Riley had to do when he was sent away and had to get counseling. So nothing is ever apples to apples. Well, I think we understand that, and times change. But I know Joe's been very passionate about the Jewish rights, as he is a Jewish person himself, and I understand that from his standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think he talked. This seems like it's going to come down, and I said this, back in the beginning of the show, which is, I think it's going to, actions speak louder than words. Michael Vick, the actions were there. He said he was going to talk and educate on why. Dog fighting was wrong. He went to schools. Mm-hmm. He went around. He still does that, by the way. People don't realize that Vic still goes and talks about what he did and why it was wrong. Desean Jackson, now some Philadelphia Jewish organizations have offered to work with Jackson. Apparently, Jackson has taken them up on that. He is going to go and tour some of these places. There has been some Jewish organizations who have tweeted that they have reached out to Jackson and talked to him and feel that he has been very receptive to them and that they are going to work. But if this words and tweets are all that we see and Jackson doesn't go and tour and talk between now and training camp, we might have a different story.
We might. And I would think if Desean it was truly apologetic the way he was and sincere and genuine about what he said, that he will take up these actions that he's already said he's going to do, and we'll make this thing right.
The Eagles put out a statement to season ticket holders, and the Ravens are reducing the seating capacity to less than 14,000. Is this the NFL now realizing it's time to seriously consider this? No fans.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about this a little bit, that while the NFL has seemingly expressed a full steam ahead sentiment the entire way, I know that behind closed doors, they have planned, as they should, by the way, they have planned for other possible scenarios as far as the season not really looking like the season that we know about it. And of course, the Ravens making that announcement shows that. But, there's a big line in that announcement. And that's the part that says if fans are allowed, it's expected that the stadium capacity would be fewer than 14,000 seats per game. So there's a big if fans are allowed, which is an acknowledgement that the NFL has obviously considered that there might not be fans allowed. And of course, the Eagles and the Ravens telling season ticket holders that this year is kind of a free pass and they can get their normal seats again the following year as if nothing ever happened is another acknowledgement, of course, that things are going to be different and there's probably not going to be full stands and there probably won't be half stands either. I'm very curious to see if the NFL tries to have a scenario where if you do have fans, is that going to be equal? In Arizona, in Texas, Arizona in particular, they have a dome stadium, right? It's hard to imagine that they're going to allow anybody in their stadium come September. I don't know, but it's hard to imagine that. Are they going to allow Baltimore to have 12,000 people in their stadium, but Arizona have none? I would think in the spirit of competitive balance, you either have all stadiums with a certain percentage of capacity or you have no fans in the stands at any stadium.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast, of course, for a deeper take on all of these topics. I want to go to J.C. Tretter's letter to the public. He basically blasted the NFL, saying what's going on in baseball. He's saying they are not taking the safety and health precautions seriously, and to the point where for people who don't know who that is, he's the head of the Players Association represents the players, and he basically blasted them and said, and now you got high-profile players, Diggs, others saying don't feel safe yet.
Yeah, they don't. And, a lot of this is because they're right now trying to have, just like baseball did, they're trying to have discussions on what they can and can't do. And they're trying to come up with a list of health and safety protocols to take. And, that's an expansive list. It involves games. It involves practices. It involves what goes on when you're not on the field, but in the clubhouses and the meetings. And so it's pretty, it's a litany of important topics, and naturally you're not going to get players and owners to agree 100% on anything. I'm a little on everything, I should say. I'm a little surprised Tretter went to the public with this because there have been things that they have agreed on, and I thought it was, I thought it would be more productive, just me personally speaking, if they could continue to have these discussions without somebody blasting somebody else through the media. Nobody likes that. We saw that with baseball. It's just never, it's just never good. And right now, I don't even think people realize that there was any acrimony going on. So it kind of brought that to light, which is never great for the fans during the pandemic anyway. But obviously it does show you that there are a decent amount of disagreements on return to work accommodations, and they have to be ironed out. And as a coaching source told me yesterday, this source was once pretty confident that camp was going to start on time. And yesterday he said to me, I'm not as confident as I once was. I mean, we saw what happened with baseball with the owners and players, and clearly here there's still a lot to hammer out before anything can proceed.
Denzel Mims was recently playing video games, and he called Philadelphia pretty much a dirty-ass, trash-ass city. Didn't he give off a similar vibe to you on ITB TV back in April?
Man, can you guys just replay my rant from 5 minutes ago on social media and just attach to that? Yeah, I mean, he definitely gave off that vibe. For those who don't know, we had Denzel Mims on our Inside the Birds TV, which is still up on our YouTube page, in April before the draft. We had him, and we had Utah cornerback Jalen Johnson. I forget what team Jalen went to. But yeah, Denzel, I happened to ask him during the interview if he had ever been to Philadelphia. I wasn't sure. And he mentioned that he was. Obviously, in Baylor, he was coached by Matt Rule. Matt Rule coached the Temple. And I guess there was a team trip at some point to Philadelphia, or several Baylor players in Philadelphia. And he wasn't as vocal and articulate about it as he was in this video game. But in our interview, he definitely said he had a bad experience in Philadelphia that kind of rubbed him the wrong way. And, he didn't really go into it. And we were at the end of it. I didn't want to press him too much. He just just basically didn't like his trip to Philadelphia. Now it comes out how he truly feels. Now that he's drafted by a team and he's got that contract he'll sign, he can come out and say it. I just think it's pretty interesting that he's playing for the Jets, who represent both North Jersey and New York. And I don't know, I've been in the East Coast all my life, and I think, Philly and New York have a lot of things in common, and Boston and DC. I don't know what separates one from the other as far as, if you're talking about the not the nicest parts of the city. To me, I mean, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. Real quick, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds. Let's get your take on. But I thought it was ironic that Quez Watkins was the first guy signed. I mean, he's a guy who I guess you could suggest is similar to Desean in build and speed. I mean, I don't know what his role is going to be, but he signed today. By the way, he's the second of the Eagles draft picks to sign. I think they got 8 more to go.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think that there's any correlation to the Desean Jackson thing. I mean, if anything, if they signed Jalen Reagor today, maybe you would say, "Oh, what's going on?" But Quez Watkins will be very, very, very lucky to make the team. And as far as speed goes, I mean, everybody they drafted has speed. So it's not just Quez Watkins. So I just think that happens to be coincidental.
Yeah.
I think it's Watkins and Prince Tega and Ogo now that are signed, and as you mentioned, 8 to go. It's funny, when they signed Prince Tega and Ogo, I don't know if everybody said, "Oh man, they really, really are sour on Andre Dillard, aren't they?" I mean, they're really worried.
Right, exactly. Well, and we've talked a little bit about this, and we'll probably get a little deeper into this with Adam, and I know Andrew likes to get into this as well. We talked about guys like Watkins. They may have a much more difficult time making this team now, as this kind of goes back to what you said. The camp might not start on time. There might be no preseason. There's already 2 down. You might have none. And what that means for a guy like Watkins making the team, it probably, limits his opportunity even that much more, even though he's an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, and I'll drop this one on you really quick. We have no idea what's going on behind closed doors discussions about return to work and what practice is going to look like. One of the things I may have heard to look out for is, are there going to be 11-on-11 practices at training camp? Can you imagine if there is some kind of, rule or protocol in place that you can't do 11-on-11s in training camp? That would be unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I know
how you get your team
I'm not
prepared.
comparing high school football to the NFL, but that's one of the protocols in the state of New Jersey is you can only have 10 people in a group at a time. Well, obviously, that means somebody is not allowed in the huddle.
Well, there you go. That's it's a new world, and the one thing I feel confident in saying is that the quality of the product in September is probably not going to be as good as we've been accustomed to seeing. And we've been already complaining about the quality of the product in September based on other changes to the CBA prior to COVID.
That's a good point. He's Geoff Mosher, and, of course, Inside the Birds. Check out their podcasts, of course. Before we run, Broads has a knockoff Bash Brothers T-shirt on. He bought it from one of the guys on the street. Acceptable, awful. And if he says awful.
Yeah, he's not even letting you
no,
finish.
I can't even get done. It says Bash Brothers, and it's Hoskins and Harper giving the old forearm smash, and it says Bash Brothers.
Yeah, I've been listening to the show, so I was already expecting you to ask me about it. It's off. There's only one Bash Brothers. We know that. We know it's McGuire and Canseco. You just don't duplicate it with Reese Hoskins and Bryce
Now,
Harper.
what's your feeling on buying the shirt off guy on corner?
I'm not I've done that. Done that a couple of times in my life.
Okay,
as well.
everyone has admitted to doing it.
All right. Well, more people do it than I thought.
Listen, I'm more offended by the misappropriation of a legendary nickname than I am buying of a knockoff T-shirt.
That is so fair. I respect that answer, Moshe.
He's Geoff Mosher at Geoff Mosher NFL. Inside the Birds, Powers football at 4. We'll do it again tomorrow with Adam Kaplan right here on the Sports Best. All right, man.
Later, fellas.
Good stuff, as always, from the Inside the Birds guys. Adam Kaplan will have more on Desean Jackson tomorrow.